Hello and welcome to the Soberful podcast. I am delighted to be joined here by Mary Alice Stevens. Hi, do you like Mary Alice or just Mary?
Either one is fine. I grew up as Mary Alice and then became Mary, but then when I started writing, I'm like, Mary Stevens sounds so generic. I put the Alice back in.
Okay, all right, cool. Well, nice to meet you, Mary. Mary is the author of a new book that's just come out called Uncorked, which is, well, I'm going to let you tell the story, but you are a writer by trade,
Yes,
right?
yes. I wrote for television for a long time. Not the exciting television, but more like travel shows, home design shows on HGTV, Food Network shows. But believe it or not, those have scripted parts to them. So I was a writer
Huh,
and a producer.
well, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to let's start with why did you decide to write a book about your relationship with alcohol and sobriety?
Well, when I was newly sober, which I got sober in 2011, I devoured sobriety memoirs. I was so used to drinking every night, having a glass of wine in my hand, that I turned to reading, and it made it so much less lonely to have somebody else to kind of share the journey with who totally got what you were going through. But what I was looking for and what I needed was somebody to take me through those first early days, weeks, and months of sobriety. It was so grueling for me and so lonely and isolating. I felt at that time, anyway, the books were more like 80% here's who I was when I was drunk. And then at the end, I quit drinking, I took up running, and life was great. And I felt like that just wasn't my experience. Um, I also was one of those alcoholics kind of hiding in plain sight. So I didn't have the dramatic consequences, no DUIs, didn't lose my job or custody. So I wanted to hear that type of alcoholic, the one where it's all happening on the inside and they're
Mm.
trying to make everything look good on the outside, but inside it's crumbling. So I just felt like I just wanted to share my story because I felt like there were a lot of people out there like me.
Well, that really fits with a lot of the stuff that I talk about, that an alcohol problem shows up on the inside years before it shows up on the outside with the DUIs and all that kind of stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about your drinking? I mean, there was you said, but there was some pretty awful things happen. You had a nasty fall and.
Yeah, right. So I was in denial for years that fall had anything to do with drinking because I was 23 at the time. I was in Dublin, Ireland on a student abroad program, and I was trying to get to a party, and I mistook where to climb over this wall to get on campus, and I fell like 45 feet, and I crushed my heel and I broke my back in three places. But I'd only had three drinks. So that was just a warm up for me back then. So I'm like, that had nothing to do with drinking, nothing to examine here. Let's just, put it behind you. But so I started drinking when I was 16. I was super wanting to be social and in with the crowd, but I was I was insecure. So I got introduced to Bacardi and Coke. We went to 7-Eleven, dumped out half the Coke, poured in a pint of Bacardi, and off to the races. And it, made me fun Mary. I could talk easier, laugh, flirt. I just really liked that personality, and my whole self-critical side really calmed down. So drank that way in high school. I thought I was a new drinker, so throwing up was like, okay, you'll get it right next time. And then I went away to college, and that was like,
You'll get it right next time.
I said that for 30 years. For 30 years, I drank until I was 45. So
Yeah.
same in college, everybody else was getting wasted. Then when I was a young professional, it was like happy hours. I worked in television and advertising. We all partied. I surrounded myself with the ones who partied. Then I started drinking for the sad things. My brother died, traumatically. I was my closest sibling. I'm one of seven,
Mm.
but he was my closest, and he fell on a hike to his death when I was 30. And I really drank through that. I didn't, I knew alcohol made me more fun, but I didn't realize it was also helping me do all these other things. Helping, I say with air quotes. Anytime emotions got big, I drank because I couldn't handle them. So I also had a first marriage that lasted 1 year, and I was super sad during the marriage. Started drinking. He had a nice wine collection and he was gone a lot. So I would kind of revenge drink his nice wine when he was gone. So I started drinking alone and at home. That marriage ended. Partying continued like every night. I just couldn't handle being alone. So I would find somebody to go out with after work and have a few drinks. And then on the weekends, I would binge drink, and then cut to about 39. I got married again, and we quickly had two kids because that's what you do when you're pushing 40. And then I became a stay-at-home mom when the kids were 3 and 4, and my drinking, morphed again. I was creating happy hour play dates so I could have moms
Mm.
over, so I could drink and not have to drive. And then I would start to have like a Friday drink with my kids for lunch because I'm like, well, I used to drink on Fridays at lunch when I worked. It's not my fault I'm alone, just trying to make the mommy time a little more fun, like a party of one. I knew that felt weird. And then there was a time on the weekends, I was still binge drinking. And there was a time where I thought, if I could just have like this slow IV drip of wine on the weekends, that would be really good. And then I was like, what in the hell are you thinking? And then the last time I drank, I was at a pool party with the kids, broad daylight. I had a bottomless glass of rosé laying in the pool with my friend chatting, and my husband was watching the kids. And I saw my son, who was 5, float by on a noodle in the deep end. And I kind of laughingly said, "Don't make mommy put her wine glass down to save you if you fall off." And then I was like, okay, that's not cool. I went on to get blackout drunk, didn't remember who put the kids to bed, nothing. I woke up with a raging hangover, and I just thought, this is not okay. My husband was furious, of course. I was just putting my marriage at risk and my kids' safety at risk. There were a couple of other times when my son was a baby that I forgot to buckle the seat, the car seat after having a few drinks, and I went over the Golden Gate Bridge like that. And one time I usually breastfed him in the nursery, but I brought him to bed, and fell asleep, and I could have smothered him. It was a super hard decision though, because I loved alcohol so much and I had become so dependent on it. I thought my life was going to be terrible and boring without it. But I thought at this point, I have to do that or I'm going to lose my husband and my kids.
Again, very common. That's what everyone thinks. What did you think? Because I now know that you probably didn't love alcohol, but what did you think you loved about it?
I thought that it made me feel pretty and sophisticated and loved and comforted. Yeah,
So
calm.
how long did you think you thought about it before you quit?
It was a dance that I played for a long time. I
Mm.
wasn't willing to give it up, so I kept justifying that because I could have 2 or 3 glasses of wine on the weekdays and not drink a bottle. That was my barometer that I wasn't an alcoholic. And I was completely ignoring the binge drinking on the weekends and the fact that I had to have a drink every day. Like I would really try, like, okay, Monday through Wednesday, don't drink, and then you can buy yourself a treat. And I just couldn't do it. I would just watch my hand pour the wine and be like, don't do it, don't do it. And I would just do it.
So what happened to what was how did you get sober? Like what was that whole situation about?
Well, I was a producer for 20 years in my career, so I know how to be productive. So day one, I decided to go to an AA meeting. I called a friend who was 4 years sober, and I just said, this is it, the jig is up. And she's like, do you want me to go with you? And I said, yeah. So I got right into it. I got right into working those 12 steps. I saw a therapist. It was a therapist I had seen before to get over the first marriage and all that. But I'd never been really honest with her about my drinking because I didn't want her to tell me stop drinking. So this time I was honest about my drinking, and she said, you've had this your whole life in your heart where you have felt like you were not enough, and you have made alcohol your solution to that. And now you need to discover your authentic self. You got to start over. And that was a big journey.
And so that's what the book is about. You're saying that the book is more about the journey of sobriety than
Yes.
necessarily so much about the drinking. Yeah, you're right. I get sent a lot of quit lit stuff, and I don't read quit lit anymore. I mean, unless it's exceptional or funny or whatever. But I do. It is kind of 80%, and some really well written and funny stories about the drinking, and then the realization and the sobriety. So tell me what you discovered, because it's such a journey, isn't it? I mean, the journey that opens up in sobriety is beyond, like, nobody can tell you what it's going to be like, but it's beyond anything you can imagine.
The surprising thing to me is that it doesn't stop, and
Mm,
it takes a long time.
mm.
So, what was your question again?
Like, what did you begin learning? Like, in those first
Oh,
few
okay.
years, like, tell me your takeaways and
Right.
ahas and
So,
breakthroughs.
So since I started drinking at 16, there's this philosophy that that's where your emotionally growth
Mm,
stops, where your emotional.
mm,
So I
mm,
was a teenager. I was a teenager trying to parent kids. And I was without alcohol, without, because my glass of wine got me through the witching hour in the evenings. I was so raw. I didn't know how to process emotions. They would just like overwhelm me. So, and all of my humor revolved around alcohol. All of my activities revolved around alcohol, even taking a hot tub or making dinner or watching TV. Like everything had to be disconnected. So I was kind of like out of sorts, not comfortable in my own skin like I was before I started drinking when I was 15. So I had to, my therapist said, this is what you do. Say, when you notice something, you say, this I like, I want more of it. Or this I don't like, I want less of it. And that's how you build who you are. Number one, I had to slow down. I had to take one thing at a time, not future trip, which is a word I learned in sobriety. Don't think about the 50 birthdays ahead of you that you're going to have to get through without alcohol. Just if you cannot drink today, don't drink today. I learned that I'm a sensitive person. Like I always thought I was so laid back, but I wasn't. That was a persona because I didn't want to be hurt by anybody. I'm really sensitive. My feelings get hurt. I'm also very empathic, which is, I think, the plus side of being sensitive. I think going through sobriety made me more empathic. I started becoming much more honest, like with my husband, especially. I had been hiding for so long this side of myself because I didn't want him to give me an ultimatum.
mm.
That being honest with him really made us closer and going through this together because he's a normal drinker, right? So learning how to navigate this together brought us closer. And I was definitely became a more present mom. When we'd go on family vacations, I'd be like, okay, let's get us situated and let me figure out how I can get my drink, and then play with the kids in one hand and drink. I called myself the one-armed mommy, drink in the other hand, but just being more present with them and then learning how to sit with emotions was a big one. And sometimes I'm still working on that one, to tell you the truth, at 14 years sober.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's my experience as well. Is when we stop drinking, we are emotional teenagers, and we just don't. And it very much sounds like your drinking was to numb, to just like you said. I wish I could just like drip feed alcohol. Like what I'm hearing you say is, I just want to be numb, comfortably numb, just comfortably get through the day, but not feeling anything. What is it they say? The good news is when you get sober, you get your feelings back, and the bad news when you get sober is you get your feelings back. And that is the roller coaster. I mean, that's what emotional sobriety is all about. But it's kind of huge.
Yeah, I think it also allowed me to click back into my spiritual side.
Mm,
I had been raised very strictly Catholic, and um, before I started drinking, I used to pray all the time and ask for everything, and then I started drinking abusively and I knew God wouldn't be cool with that. And I kind of disconnected. And then when I got sober, the morning I decided to get sober, I said a quick prayer. I'm like, God, please help me get sober. It was the first time I asked him for help because it was the first time I wanted to stop drinking. And I just checked back into that relationship. And then I realized it wasn't a church where I felt God. It was out in nature and just taking hikes in the hills and just feeling dirt and earth and seeing trees and sky and birds and smelling eucalyptus. That became I don't want to use the word higher power, but that became where I felt calm and content.
can I ask what was most helpful to you?
Knowing other people were going through it with me,
Mm.
having that support. My favorite thing when I would walk into a meeting was to see somebody I recognized from a parent from the kids' school. And I'd be like, yes, there's more of me out there. And I remember sitting at my son's baseball game and looking around, and there were 5 of us parents on the team who I'd all seen in the rooms. And it's just like this camaraderie that people get you without having to say a word.
Mm. That's it. It's interesting because that's people's often their greatest fear is that they won't go to an AA meeting because they're going to see someone they know. And if you go to a neighborhood meeting, well, yeah, that's possible, right? But what they don't understand is like nobody's like you walk into an AA meeting for the first time, there's nobody there judging you. Nobody's
Right.
going, right?
Right.
Like
Because they're there.
it's an immediate like, man, I know what that feels like. it's a lot to get over. I'm interested in hearing about the relationship with your father, which was very linked with alcohol. Is he still alive or?
No, he passed in 2018. But yeah, no,
Ah,
he was, he was bigger than life personality.
mm. I'm
And
thinking Irish Catholic. Am I?
yes, you
Yeah.
are correct. Just a great, happy-go-lucky man who was happiest around bartending. And we had the family cocktail hour. We would all come home, to visit my parents. When we became 18, he allowed us to have a cocktail in the house, even though it's 21 drinking age in the States. But when I was little, like little enough to have to climb up onto a high chair, I got to be his assistant. And being the sixth of seven kids, it was a big deal to have one-on-one time with him. So I remember putting the cherries and in the Manhattans and the olives and onions and the
Mm.
martinis. And then he'd stir it and I would taste the spoon and it tasted so awful and it would make him laugh. And then I would serve the drinks, and he would tell me what to say. Here's your libation, madam. So it was very playful part of our.
It's so interesting to me. Sorry to interrupt you, because neither me or my husband drink, and family drinking is such a. I mean that's a lot of people. So you just grew up where drinking was normalized.
Yeah. And nobody was drunk. Like his mom was an alcoholic, but she was long dead. And they had 2 rounds of drinks and that was it, you
Hmm.
know? So and as I grew up, he started letting me make the cocktails. And then I remember a month before I got sober, I bought him this backyard bartender recipe book. And I had come home newly sober without having told anyone because I couldn't bear that breaking that bond with him. Brings out the book and he's like, "What are we going to make out of the book today?" And I was just like, I'm not going to have anything to drink today, Dad. And he just looked at me like, "What?" And I just felt our relationship like cracking in that moment. And I was so sad. And it wasn't until Christmas time came around and every Christmas, birthday, Father's Day, I got him alcohol and he loved it. And that was the thing. And this year I'm like, what on earth am I going to get him for Christmas? And I made a photo calendar for him because we also used to be into photography because I was trying to think like, what are our other connections? And we have such a huge family, a lot of grandkids that I made this photo collage calendar for him. And he was so touched by it and so happy. And I just realized like our connection wasn't about the alcohol. It was about family.
So do you think your dad was disappointed at first?
So here's the hard thing. Being Irish Catholic, he was so stoic. He and my mom. We
Mm.
never talked about feelings. When I called him to tell him about my drinking problem, he literally said, "Okay, well, we'll just serve you an apple juice from now on." That was the conversation.
Mm.
So I felt his sadness in that moment when I said, "I'm not going to drink with you." I felt it. And I felt it when I watched him go in, make drinks without me. I felt my sadness too. So I think it's kind of hard for me to separate the two.
So how was it as you became, so you were sober for a few years before he passed?
Yeah.
How was that?
I mean, my dad is my dad. We never
Mm.
discussed it. He never asked about it. He
Wow.
just, when it was cocktail time, he made me what I asked for, which was usually a cranberry juice and club soda with a lime. And it was just yesterday's topic. And in fact, I had to make an amends to him and mom because I was so resentful all these years. When I had that big accident in Ireland, they didn't visit. When my first marriage broke up, they just didn't really have any sympathetic words. And then when I got
Mm.
sober, nothing. So I had all this resentment toward them. And so I had to make an amends. But knowing my parents the way my sponsor did, she said, "I just want you to tell them that you appreciate all they did for you as parents, that they did the best that they could. They just weren't
Mm.
equipped with that. They were Irish, stoic, depression era parents. My parents were old. Like if my dad was alive, he'd be 105 today.
Mm.
And they didn't, they had tough lives. He had an alcoholic mother. His only
Mm.
brother drowned. My mom had a farm in the depression that got taken. Emotions and feelings weren't part of their world, which unfortunately I took on as my baggage, right?
Mm.
And when I had big feelings, I'm like, "Oh, I don't know how to deal
Mm.
with this." So I drank.
What about the relationship with the rest of your siblings?
All fine. They were all, once I finally told them, I thought it was a big deficiency. Like I can't play on the family team anymore because, I can't drink. My oldest sibling has been sober since she was 29. She's now about 70. But again, it wasn't anything we talked about, really. She lived on the other side of the country. And, she's so much, not so much, she'd be offended if I said so much older than me, but she's 12 years older than me. So by the time I was 5, she was out of the house. So, but no, everybody's been very loving. In fact, after I wrote the memoir, I showed them all before I published it, and they're all very supportive. So it's brought us closer. We were a family that shared celebrations together, but never hardships. And now I don't know that it's because of me, but I feel like we're all more open about the hard stuff that's going on in our lives.
How did you, like, you talk in your book about starting over? Like, this was it sounds like alcohol was just entrenched in every single area of your social life, like date nights with your husband, all that kind of stuff. What was that journey like? I mean, I'm sure it's like, it is for me now. Like, it just is normal that I don't drink and it doesn't. But tell me about that.
It was very hard at first. I remember going on my first date night with my husband sober. It clicked. I was 45. I'd never had a date without alcohol ever. And I'm like, I can't go out to a nice restaurant. We used to go sit at the cocktail bar, have a cocktail, then have a nice white tablecloth dinner, and that would be our date. A little champagne for dessert for me. So I wanted to do something that wouldn't trigger me. So I thought, okay, we'll go kayaking. And I was getting in the kayak. And I'm like, oh, where can I stash a little drink? And I'm like, I'm not going to be doing that. I won't be doing that. So everything was a big transition. I was going to a lot of kid birthday parties. Everybody serves alcohol at these parties. I just remember getting like heckled by a dad at one of those parties. Like, you can't even have one beer. And I was like, wow. So I had to start saying no to some things. It was a lot on me. I hosted the happy hour play dates. There was a lot had to change, and me being comfortable saying no took some exercise.
Boundaries.
Well, I had FOMO. I was so social, and I had FOMO. I really wanted to be there, but I really didn't want to be miserable the whole time. So, I started employing some tricks, arriving late, leaving early, bringing my own drinks, learning to disguise my drink. Like, the first time I brought one of those hot pink vitamin waters, and everybody's like, what the hell's going on with you? And then I'm like, all right, pour it in whatever cup they're using, put some ice in it, throw the bottle away, and just walk around, and nobody's going to ask you any questions.
Yeah. I wonder how many people in your social circle have stopped drinking.
Well, I can say that I've lost a few friends.
Yeah.
The heavier drinker ones kind of stopped calling me.
Yeah, they do. The people who like to drink do not like people who do not drink. They do not want to be around you.
Yeah. I think I just became a mirror to them.
That's exactly what happens.
Well, like, I used to avoid people who didn't drink when I drank.
Do you want to be around those people? Like, those people having a good time and looking all nice and healthy, like, reminding us that you can, like, have a social life without needing alcohol. Those people, we don't want to be around those people.
I know. I have a fun trick I play now. I used to look at who was drinking at parties, and now I look at who's not drinking. And they tend to be very interesting people.
Yeah. I bet, I mean, you may not know, but I bet I always say this to my clients, that if you are questioning your drinking, 50% of the people around you are also questioning their relationship with alcohol. And I bet $1 million some of them are. That's their story and their journey. So what is your hope for the book? What kind of people do you want it to reach? What's the message of it?
I mean, I think my target audience is people who are sober curious, or people who are in new sobriety who just need somebody to hold their hand and walk them through the fire. Like, I think that I chapter 1, I get sober, and I walk through those early days, and there's humor in them too. Like, we're so surrounded by alcohol. Like, I just remember, like, a Monday morning going to get a coffee, and there was a big billboard outside the coffee house that said bottomless mimosas. And I'm like, are you kidding me? It's Monday morning. So, I mean, I hope my reader would just be moved by the story and have a laugh as well. Also people who have been my early readers who don't have a problem with alcohol are really relating to it because they know somebody who has a problem with alcohol, and they get this perspective of what it's like to be the alcoholic. Or other people who are going through a different big change in their life, I think, would like this book.
Oh, and tell me about the relationship with your husband, like how that has changed and evolved. And
yeah, it has. I have gotten a lot more honest, and it has made us so much closer. And navigating sobriety together, he's been a great partner. Like, so sensitive, asking me, is it okay if I have a drink tonight? And he has stopped drinking. And not that he ever drank too much, but
Mm,
he realized that I was the one who was always like putting out a nightly glass of wine with dinner or
mm.
suggesting a cocktail on Friday after work or whatever. And now he's like, I don't even miss it. I don't even need it. But it's made us definitely closer.
My husband, he doesn't drink, like he's never had a problem. He will occasionally have an alcoholic drink. I mean, it's so occasional. Like he would never come home and have a beer or a glass of wine. But if we were like out with friends who had a bottle of wine, he would probably have a glass with them and not finish it. Like it's really very rare. And he loves the fact that we don't drink. He's when his son, he has my stepson was older and he would visit us in England, and my husband always was like take him out to the pubs and stuff and have like 2 or 3 beers and be like, oh God, this is like, and he just loves the fact that we don't drink. And I always say to him, if I was like a regular person who, like, we had a couple of glasses at the weekend, you would have a couple of glasses at the weekend. You would drink more if I was a person who, like, had a few drinks here and there. The only reason, like, you just very, very, very rarely drink is it's just not part of our universe at all in any way. So I think that's very natural that the partner who doesn't have a problematic relationship just moderates and just really enjoys it and doesn't miss it. And are your kids grown up now?
They're 18 and 19.
So how much do they know of your journey?
Well, they know as much as they want to ask. So I've been very open with them. I've given them the book. I think my daughter's halfway through it. My son, maybe 2 chapters. So I'm an open book with them. I think it's so important.
Yeah. Do you worry about their relationship with alcohol?
Yeah, I think I will. I think I always will.
Yeah, same.
Until they're fully baked, until they're over the age of 25. I think it will be on my mind because they're launching off to college, and I remember what college was like for me. So
yeah. But apparently Gen Z are not drinking. Like like it's literally the graph is like boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z. It's like drinking rates in Gen Z have cut, but I do not think they're not getting a buzz.
I was just gonna say, yes, I will say for sure, I know that they're way better at not drinking and driving.
Yeah, I don't know if binge. I mean, I bet binge drinking is definitely still a thing, but I don't know if I wonder if it's still such a thing. I mean, I'm Gen X, and we invented binge drinking.
No, it's definitely still a thing, and I think they're using other substances to get high as well.
Yeah, God, it's terrifying being a parent, isn't it?
I know. I have to tell you one thing before I forget. It's a line that you said on one of your podcasts that sticks with me and it makes me chuckle. When you said getting sober, it's not like you go to the gym for 6 months and expect to have a perfect body for the rest of your life. Emotional sobriety is something that you continue to work on.
Mm-hmm.
I love that so much. And I think I need to be reminded of that sometimes. And the other ironic part is I'm about to turn 60 and I'm finally going to the gym. And I think about you whenever I get to the gym. It cracks me up, but it's so true.
Yeah, it is. But that's the gift of sobriety, is actually the work of emotional sobriety is just personal development. It is the development of yourself. And that is a lifelong task. And it's glorious. And I never would have done it if I hadn't got sober. I would have lived a 50% life, because the journey, the personal development journey is the riches that will come to you when you stop drinking.
Yes. And my next hurdle to climb is learning to stop being a grudge holder. That's the one dangling, like, come on, Mary, you can do this.
Yeah, that's the resentment work. That it creates an internal rearrangement, and we realize that nothing is personal.
Yeah. You're so wise. I love your podcast. I learn something every time I listen.
Thank you. Well, I don't know about wise, but yeah, just experience. Like I've had to learn everything the painful way. So, Mary, where can everybody find your book?
Thank you for asking. It will be on Amazon, and ask for it at your independent bookstore. It should be available everywhere.
Thank you so much for coming. Mary's, we will link it. Yeah. Mary's book is called Uncorked, a memoir of letting go and starting over, and really about the journey of sobriety and figuring that out as a midlife woman and mother of young children. So thank you so much for joining us. We will link to it in the show notes. And
thank you so much, Veronica. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
You're welcome. And I'd love to know what you guys think of this episode, and please check out Mary's book. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.
I dreamt you were twisted through 7 sunlight.